Hi, I'm Dick Osgood with the Lake Minnetonka Association. Welcome to the next Lake Minnetonka Association Presents. My guest today is Joe Shneider, President of the Christmas Lake Homeowners Association. Welcome, Joe.
Good afternoon, Dick.
So the topic today is this big, bold prevention plan. Joe, we're going to have you talk about it. Joe and I are both members of a newly formed organization, the Coalition of Minnehaha Creek Waters. Tell us who they are.
Well, this is a group of about 8 lake associations and creek associations that have banded together so we have a stronger voice as it relates to trying to influence either legislation or actions with our government groups in the fight against aquatic invasive species, in the protection of our waters from rainwater runoff problems, etc.
Okay, and can you give us a list of who the representatives are?
You know, I can, but I'm going to use my notes. It is a group from Pearson Lake, Gleason Lake, Lake Minnetonka, Lake Minnewaska, Wasserman Lake, Christmas Lake, Mooney Lake, and the Minnehaha Creek Corridor.
Okay, well, thank you. So the first initiative, there will likely be others, but the first one is invasive species protection.
Right.
Why now?
Well, we are coming to the close of the 2012 boating season. The threats haven't gotten any less. The number of infestations has gotten greater. And so we have a very large need to rekindle the dialogue about aquatic invasive species and doing everything we possibly can to make sure.
There's a slide we'll put up here too.
Doing everything we possibly can to keep the aquatic invasive species out of the lakes.
Good, good. So we have some recent examples of the plan proposes inbound inspections, meaning boats and trailers coming into lakes as opposed to outbound inspections.
Right. Right.
Why?
Well, it's really a very simple strategy. If you were only worried about what we have in Lake Minnetonka today, that would be Eurasian water milfoil, zebra mussels, some curly-leaf pondweed, and flowering rush, among others, and you were trying to keep that from going somewhere else, then an outbound inspection model might make some sense. If you did it consistently, if you did it at all the landings, if you covered all the boats that were leaving. But the reality is that the threat list of things that are coming is long, and we really have other invasive species that are on the horizon to come into Lake Minnetonka. So if we don't do an inbound inspection program, we don't stop the next thing from coming in. And it's really that simple. If you don't do inbound, you can't stop the next invasive.
And we learned just this last week on Lake Minnewaska, the outbound inspections don't keep zebra mussels from Lake Minnetonka moving out anyway.
Right, or Gull Lake. The other example at Lake Minnewaska was a zebra mussel infested boat from Gull Lake.
And Lake Minnetonka.
Right.
2 in 1 week. So that's compelling. And it's not just about Lake Minnetonka, this plan, it's about all the lakes and the creek in Minnehaha Creek watershed.
That's exactly right. So there are approximately 30 boat landings in public boat landings in the Lake Minnetonka and other waters around the watershed. There's about 128 or 129 landings, 128 or 129 lakes, but only about 30 public accesses. Now there are a variety of marinas, specifically on Lake Minnetonka, and there are a variety of private landings, and those need to be addressed as well. The marinas have defined control mechanisms already. They don't let just anybody launch. They have physical controls of one form or another. The private landings are where we have some risk that has to be addressed in the program.
You mean the public landings?
The public landings for sure.
Okay.
And the private landings we have to make sure we have dealt with appropriately. And there's a couple of techniques to be able to do that.
Okay. So you've combined, or we have combined in this proposal, a number of things that are in balance. Regional inspection stations, dedicated inspection sites, and gated accesses,
Right.
controlled accesses.
Right. It gets to be a relatively simple equation. We know that in the most convenient case, we would do inspections and decontaminations at every landing. That's what everybody wants to have happen. That means the least amount of change in anybody's boating behaviors. But that's...
I'm just going to interrupt briefly. Most convenient for the boaters.
Most convenient for the boaters.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So at point of entry, do the whatever inspection job or decontamination job you're going to need to do to my boat. That's exactly right. That's the most convenient. That's actually the most convenient if you have to do an inspection. If you didn't have to do anything, which is where we are today on most of our landings, that is clearly the most convenient. But if you look at the cost model to be able to do inspections at every landing, it is the most prohibitive cost model that we have. And so instead, what we've been proposing is a technique that's been used in government, a technique that's been used in business for a long time, which is centralization or regionalization of the inspection process. So put the inspectors at a convenient place, have the boaters go there, and then if they pass inspection, which the vast majority of boats will pass inspection, or be cleaned with a decontamination, as long as that happens, then they're free to go into any lake, any access that they want. And the technique that we would use for that is just similar to what you would use at a car wash. Get your gas, tell them you want a car wash, they give you a 4 or 5 or 6-digit code number. When the boater does the same thing, he gets his boat inspected, he gets a 4 or 5 or 6-digit code number, and he can go to whatever landing he wants and punch it in, and the gate will go in, and he can go boat. So there is no closing.
Okay, so we have a graphic here that shows the concept about where these stations might be, and we'll stress these haven't been finally selected at this point.
Yeah, but before we go there, Dick, I think this is an important point. Is that there really is a balancing act that we're trying to do. The most cost-effective way is a regional inspection model. The most expensive way and most convenient way is a at-the-landing model. And so what our plan has put together is a combination, a little bit of a blend of both regional inspection models to drive a bunch of cost out and dedicated inspection models at a particular landing. In the cases of high-volume landings, for example, Grays Bay would be a very logical place. A North Arm landing might be another logical place. Three Rivers Park District I guess it's on the west side of Lake Minnetonka, might be another logical candidate.
Yeah, and they'll be on other lakes as well. Now this all comes under why do we need to do it at all? And our coalition has adopted a goal of stopping the spread.
Right.
And if it had been a lesser goal, we may not need to go through all this. But with a lesser goal, we know from experience now that that just doesn't work, does it?
Right. Right, that's exactly right. You could do almost anything and achieve the goal of slowing the spread. I could put out a flyer and I could say I have achieved my goal of slowing the spread. That doesn't, frankly, have any value to anyone.
I want that job. No accountability.
There you go.
But seriously, unless it's stop the spread, the strategy is kind of mushy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and this strategy is very clearly to stop the spread. That's the goal, and the technique is an inbound inspection model to make sure that boats that are entering the water are AIS free.
Okay. So we've got a graphic here of the watershed that shows, again, in concept where some of these might be. Why don't you walk us through how this would work?
Yeah, well, if you can see this on the chart well enough, there are boxes with a red R or a red D in them, and the Ds are dedicated. So, for example, in this case, this is our first cut recommendation on it. I think it includes Grays Bay, I think it includes North Arm, I think it includes the Lake Minnehaha Regional Park, and I think it includes the Three Rivers Park District. The regional accesses are intended to basically ring Lake Minnetonka and have something close to the the Minneapolis chain of lakes. So there's 4, I believe, that are ringing Lake Minnetonka, 2 on the north and 2 on the south, and then 1 closer into Minneapolis. So that's the concept, so that you shouldn't have to drive more than maybe 10 miles to be able to get to a regional inspection spot. And those specific sites need to be identified. Those are not, they're not existing today. Certainly the dedicated sites exist today, but the regional sites need to be firmed up in terms of site selection and design, acquiring the land, et cetera.
So it seems to me there'll be a couple of scenarios. Let's walk through someone wanting to use a dedicated site, say, for example, Grays Bay.
Sure.
What happens there?
Sure. And the way we would think would make sense to operate the dedicated sites as well as the regional sites, we need to, for us to be able to find an economical model, we need to make sure that we are balancing the amount of capacity or the amount of inspection capacity with the expected demand. So you take a high volume weekend in the summer, we're going to have a recommendation that every access, regional as well as the dedicated accesses with inspections, be open. Now counter that with it's an early spring day and it's the middle of the week and it's expected to be about 50 degrees outside. You might get some boat traffic, but you're probably not going to get a lot. Mm-hmm. So we would want to throttle down, have the program throttle down how much inspection capacity is there when there's not much demand. And you could do that by reducing how much staff you might have at a regional location. You might do that by saying we're only going to run 3 of the regional locations on this 50-degree rainy spring day. And specifically as it relates to any of the public accesses, as long as they have the electronic access control, you can go anywhere to get inspected, get the code, and get in. Mm-hmm. So it really doesn't impact anybody's ability to get in. You may have to travel a little bit farther on those light volume days, but otherwise everything's available.
So inconvenience goes up a bit, but efficacy goes up as well.
And the cost model is as low as we can possibly do it.
We've heard the criticism or the complaint or the fear, now I'll have to wait in long lines to get on any lake. I just don't think that's very real because if we can help get predictive in terms of what kind of traffic we're going to expect, we can make sure that that the program is staffed appropriately at every one of the inspection sites. So, you know, there might be situations where you could get some backlog, but quite frankly, we also think that there's very logical ways that you can do this and get inspected in advance. And we think that changing the mindset of having the inspection and the decontamination immediately prior to getting into the water is, you know, it's just been inserted in. And it's not necessarily the best way to do it, either for the boating public or for the potential for lines at a particular inspection location. You know, so there are techniques that are used in other parts of the country that do inspections, and they have the ability to get an inspection done in advance before you want to use the boat. So imagine it's a family, right? I mean, the perfect situation, right? The family is very busy on a weekend. They have about 3 or 4 hours they want to get out on the water. They got the tubes in the boat, etc. If the boat had been inspected sometime earlier that week, or perhaps even the week before and hadn't entered any water, they can go sailing through the inspection process, because there are techniques you can use to identify that that boat has not been in any water since it was last inspected. Okay, so it would represent a change.
Yeah.
In some of my columns, I know I talk about the culture, the boat-loving and lake-loving culture we have, which is certainly true.
Right.
But that, on the other side, I've also argued that's exactly what's facilitating the movement of these invasive species.
Right.
So one or the other is going to have to give a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to have to live with them.
Right.
So,
right.
All right.
You know, and so my standard mantra to this is, if we don't change what we're doing, every popular lake will get every aquatic invasive species.
Yep. Yep. I've done a little homework and found that every accessible lake in Minnehaha Creek watershed now has Eurasian water milfoil, except one. So, and it is about the accesses too, because no lakes lacking in access now has milfoil in this district.
Yeah.
So it does point to that as the main focus. It's going to cost something.
It's absolutely going to cost something.
Talk about that. We have a graphic that's fairly detailed, but let's walk through that.
Yeah. So the top part of this chart is looking at the operating cost. That would be the yearly operating cost. The bottom part of this chart is looking at the one-time cost to establish the program, and then across the columns, it's 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17, and then a 5-year total. So that gives you a perspective to understand what will it cost to operate this on an annual basis, and then what is the one-time cost that we have to put in to be able to make this capability work. The one-time costs have been pretty well front-end loaded into the 2013, and that's cost associated with establishing the program, buying land for the regional locations, getting the decontamination capabilities in place, and getting the communications program, because as you say, it's a big cultural change, behavioral change, and it's going to need a lot of communications to be able to make sure that works right. So those things are for the most part, are in year one, or the 2013 year. We've spread them a little, some of those one-time costs a little, and we've put some of the electronic access controls at the landings into year 2, and we've put into year 3, the 5th. We would do 4 of the 5 regional sites in year 1, and the 5th in year 3, and that's presuming that we do in fact need a 5th. I think we're still a little unsure as to whether or not 4 or 5 are the right number of regional locations.
Okay. Okay, and on the opening slide, it had today's date, August 9th.
Yes.
This proposal is going to be presented to the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board. Now, I just said it as today, but when people watch this, it'll be after the fact. But we're going there tonight to present this. What challenges might we expect, and how would you address those?
Yeah, I think the fact is this is a big, bold initiative, and you know, it's there's going to be a lot of questions about do we need to do this? Is it the right thing to do? Is it practical? Can we achieve the results? Why should the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District do it? And I think there are some interesting answers to all those questions. Let me start with the last one. You know, we now, with the AIS laws that are in place, we have the ability to protect a lake pretty well. It's a very expensive proposition. That's what we're doing at Christmas Lake this year. We have 100% inspection, inbound inspection for all of the times that the landing is open. And just to put a number on that, that's costing us about $46,000 this year for the summer. We have no decontamination, so we get a boat that doesn't come in clean. We don't have the ability to decontaminate, but we can turn it away. So a lake could do it. We could get a group of lakes together to do it and get some economies of scale. But the real question is, how can we have an impact, the biggest impact? And quite frankly, the biggest impact I think that we can achieve, given that we aren't doing anything statewide, is a watershed, and the Minnehaha Creek is a wonderful body of waters and land to do that in. We have some very big lakes, obviously Lake Minnetonka, the most complicated lake we've got to deal with, and a whole bunch of other lakes. Some feed Lake Minnetonka, some are fed by Lake Minnetonka. So if we can do it at the biggest level, practical, politically speaking, that would be the watershed. And there's nobody in a better position than the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District to do the watershed. We expect some opposition at the meeting tonight. We expect that there will be probably some recreational groups, perhaps anglers, that will be concerned about this kind of a model. We believe that some of the marinas are concerned that it will impact their business and their homeowners. But I think at the end of the day, I think we're really looking at a goal that is desirable for all. The question is whether everyone believes we can in fact achieve it. And again, as we talked about earlier, there are many things coming, but if we only looked at zebra mussels, you might say it doesn't matter for Lake Minnetonka, it's game over. We've already got them. But the reality is the AIS species that are coming are many, and some of the ones that are coming are worse than what we already have. Quagga mussels are bigger than zebra mussels, they filter more, and in combination they do worse things with zebra mussels. And hydrilla is viewed by the AIS experts that I've heard as the biggest worry that we have. And hydrilla is viewed as Eurasian water milfoil on steroids. And if we don't figure out a way to stop those things, Minnetonka will get all of those.
And then in turn, every other lake.
Right.
Which has been how milfoil has played out. And hopefully we're not too late for zebra mussel and all the rest.
Right, right.
Well, good. Any last thoughts?
No, I think it's absolutely the right time to bring this up. We're talking now for 2013, the 2013 boating season. That sounds like it's a long way away. We're still in August of 2012, and yet you and I both know that if we are trying to get anything big to happen and get governments, local government units to make this all happen, this will take every amount of the available time that they have.
Well, I'm not much of a business guy, but the logistics behind this are onerous. So yes, it will take some time. Yep,
absolutely.
Well, good. Joe, we're out of time. It goes by quickly.
It does.
So thank you, and
thank
you all. They'll put up contact information, as they always do, for the Lake Minnetonka Association. And if anyone wants to know how to get a hold of Joe at Christmas Lake, get a hold of me, and I'll put you in touch.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.